Just about halfway or more into the championship as the longest season in RCI's history continues today. We land in France here at Paul Ricard. Will we see a repeat winner today, or will somebody else rise to the occasion? Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Kevin Boss on commentary duty today. As always, Stewie behind the pictures today. Well, Tim, it's getting to that point, halfway thereabouts in the season. A couple of drivers have netted wins today, but still the championship wide open.
Yeah, and for me, this is one of the most exciting parts of the season, Jesse. We've got 3 races down. There's been 3 different winners in each. And one good race today could take someone else completely new to the top of the leaderboard here. So I'd say this is one of the most exciting rounds. And after it's finished, we will get to see where everyone sort of is in the standings. You will get that general idea of how each car's performing across the championship and who's likely to continue to perform well as well. So it's sort of, I feel like this is the setup for the finale of the whole season. The finale, of course, being the last 4 races rather than just the very final race.
Certainly the case. Crazy season thus far, like you said, a bunch of different winners. A lot of good racing, though, Kevin Boss.
Oh, definitely. We've seen some good racing all through the grid, all the way starting in Silverstone up until the drenched race that was Hungary. Definitely Hungary asked a lot from all of the drivers, and most of them came out very well.
Well, qualifying starting here, low light conditions, and of course the ever-present racetrack here with the big sweeping corners, big curbs on some parts, very fast as well. 181 has made it their way first out of the pit lane, but has decided they left something in the pit lane. They will go back and reset for the time being. Tim, 10 minutes, not a long time. It's a fairly large circuit as well. You might get 2 cracks at it with a little bit of a readjustment in the middle, but that should be just about it.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of chances in qualifying here today. Like you said, it's one of those circuits that's quite long naturally. Of course, if you make a slight mistake in one lap as well, you're going to lose that entire lap too, because the time does add up across the length of the circuit. Of course, you do have this nice, lovely long straight here, which gives you a bit of a chance to stretch out actually in the race itself. I do find when I'm driving Paul Ricard myself, this is, especially in endurance races, this is the place to give yourself a rest. However, in qualifying, you're going to want to be on fire for the whole thing. But like you said, 10 minutes, not a lot of time. There's already a couple of cars on track right now. In fact, most of them have left the pits already, but you do need to be making sure you get those laps in, especially if you're in the midfield, because if you get to the end sector where you get a lot of those corners one after the other and someone goes wrong, that's going to slow down your lap as well. So if you're in the midfield, get that first lap in quickly and hope it's going to be a good one, just to sort of push you up the field, because you may not get another shot.
Kevin, it's a really big circuit and not a lot of time. Does that put added pressure on a driver to nail that one lap and maybe force more mistakes in the process?
It definitely tends to get to you with the time crunch, with the long lap time. But I think what's most important is, even if it's not the fastest lap, just get that first lap in without any mistakes, not push too hard, and then for like the second, maybe third lap, then try and get every little bit of time out of this track. So at least you're on the board and you don't get pushed all the way to the back by pushing too hard at the start and not getting in a proper lap.
Speaking of getting in a proper lap, Daniel Durrett, the Beast Racing number 300, will be among the first, if not the first, to try and set a valid lap, but they won't get that honor. They've already invalidated it. They hadn't made it out of the S. de la Verrier before they invalidated their lap here today. So that, again, as we just spent the last several minutes discussing, several minutes of wasted time, they might only get one more shot at setting a time. We didn't talk about that, though. Disallowing times, running off the racetrack. The track limits here, Tim, quite strict around some of these turns.
Oh, 100%. The track limits are really, really strict. Luckily, they're quite clear where they are. You saw, as they were coming out onto the straight there, you saw the 2 tiny little boards on the side. That marks how far your car can go out before you invalidate it. However, the track limits are quite strict, especially on the first set of corners, towards the end as well, and even in the corner that you're about to see Foch go through now, the track limits, they do catch you out a little bit. And the other problem with Paul Ricard's track in terms of track limits, Jesse, is that it's very easy to force yourself over them, especially the one you just watched Foch go through. Slingshot yourself around that corner in a very high gear, most likely 5th, sometimes even 6th. It's very easy to go that little bit wide, so making sure you get it right in qualifying can be quite tough, but I imagine some of these drivers will actually probably take it easy for that first lap. Just get in that banker time, make sure that you've already got a lap down there, and then you can push hard once you've got the safety time in. But it's one of those things, it's like you say, you do have to be very careful of it, and Paul Ricard, very well known as a track for being quite strict on the track limit.
Well, Samir Foch has kept it inside the bounds of the racetrack, and he'll set our first time, a 53.725, the quickest of the 2 cars that have crossed the line, and very much the benchmark times have a line in there. Several cars have come across the line besides those 2, and they've automatically invalidated, so they will have to reset. Think about it. Cartier comes across and takes P2. Vasquez in 4th place, and that is John Razor now, as several more cars are coming across the line. Kevin, it is a very tight window, of course, and you mentioned a moment ago about how difficult it can be, how much extra stress it puts on you. What happens after you invalidate that first lap? Do you back off a little bit? Do you just try to get to the line again as quick as possible and then take it easy? What's the strat if you have invalidated your first lap?
I think it depends on when you invalidate the lap. Like, if you do it at this point, you still have time to put in 2 more laps. At that point, I'd say, okay, calm down, try and focus. Maybe at that point, have a think like, where did it go wrong? And then go again the next time. If it's near the end, you need to keep on pushing, try and get that extra lap in. And then, yeah, you might be making more mistakes, but then it's more of a time crunch, and then you really need to go.
This is a very interesting scenario as well, something you'll see in the race. Valentin Berrier, the Rocket Sim Sport driver, crafting the car in front. That is worth a little extra time. You just got to be careful here in Sector 3 that you don't catch them too much, otherwise you lose all that time. Also, the aero wash, also a big issue around here, a very fast-flowing circuit. But, Tim, that was a mammoth draft down the Mistral Straight.
That was very, very good for Barrier. They're going to benefit a lot off of that slipstream there. Like you said, it's a long straight. If you can catch them right at the beginning of it, then you get that huge benefit in terms of time. But you do have to be careful, because if your car does get too close, you will be held up. It looks like, though, Valentin has managed to judge this perfectly. And you can see not being held up too bad by the car ahead. That's going to allow them to set a really good time. They're actually about to cross the line now, so we can see just how useful that slipstream was for them. It's going to be enough to put them up into 3rd place with a 153.725. So not quite enough for pole, but it's a good start for Valentin Barrier.
Sure is. And of course, now the board has flipped over. Several cars now not in positions you would expect them to be, of course, and it is going to be a tale of who can get that last lap in. Only 3 minutes left. They had 10 minutes to play with here in the fading light in France, but now with just 3 minutes left to go, you'll get probably 2 more, as long as you do not invalidate. Lamborghini up front and in control right about now. What can Samir Foch, Valentin Berrier, Jardier, and Klein, what can they all do here to get back up to the top of the board? There he is, Christoph Simon, 966 coming to the line. Will this be a further improvement for the Lamborghini crowd? We'll wait for him to get to the line, and it is indeed a 53.362, laying the gauntlet down here, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely. Taking that chunk already of 310s out of Samir Foch and Barrier definitely gives him a bit of a cushion to, well, possibly get pole. And if he can link this now into another great lap and improve his time even further, the guys behind are going to have a hard time catching him.
I'm a bit surprised to see a Lamborghini doing this much damage around here, Tim, but you probably have more experience than I do. Is this odd to see the Raging Bull here?
I mean, I couldn't tell you about the Lamborghini personally. I know that some of the stewards are actually in here talking about the cars, how they perform around this track before we started the race, Jesse. And the Lamborghini definitely wasn't one that was mentioned as well. The Lamborghini, probably not a car you'd mention on any track, really. It seems to be one of those cars at the moment that's not in the best place in terms of competitiveness. But Simon has managed to find something right with that car. They've put it on provisional pole for now, and that is going to be a good start for them nonetheless. Something that I'm not surprised about though, Jesse, is the two Ferraris. It's been said by a lot of people said that the Ferrari is expected to be the best car out on track here at Paul Ricard, and it's also noted that the McLaren should do quite well as well. So to see two Ferraris, Jardier and Foch, right there in second and third, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, Jardier goes P2 and goes to the garage. They will forfeit their opportunity to set a final lap here. I wonder if maybe they invalidated on their final lap and they've called it quits. That might have very well have been the case. Samir Foch, though, still out there running a lap, and Savalainen is going to call it quits as well. They will do no better than ninth, and that is not what Juna needed here today after what was sort of a almost disaster 1 week ago. Talk more about that and show you the championship points at the conclusion of qualifying here. But here is Samir Foch in a Ferrari, one of the best cars around this particular joint. Needs to make up some time though, Kevin.
Yeah, he's got it down to 2/10 already, so he's got some time in there, but now with the time being near the end, it is getting tight.
Sure is, showing us the heads-up display on the car itself. Some of those gauges, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't show correctly because it would give away some of the sensitive information from the team. Other gauges do work, however, but yeah, just absolutely maximizing the revs, over boosting it down the straight, but that's not the problem. The problem was running wide, coming through Garlaban. I think that was, actually, no, he didn't even get there. He was in the double right-hander when he invalidated that lap, so he will do no better than third place here.
And that's a shame for Foch as well, because they had some real pace already in qualifying and did have the potential there for pole position. Christian Bock crossing the line in the GTR, a fan favourite, and hoping to do well today, puts himself up into 15th place. That's a good improvement for Bock there to start. Cass in the Honda as well, about to cross the line. They're going to promote themselves all the way up into the 4th place position too. So a couple of people left to cross the line, Jesse. Most of them actually in the pit, surprisingly, so either not to do that final lap or just simply invalidated it. But you've still got a couple of people left to cross the line. Alexander is one of them here. They're driving for Viscero Esports in the Porsche, a car that's not noticed to do too well today. However, I have seen that car already holding that pole position in practice and did have some fast times, and that's going to be enough to put them up into 5th as well. So Alexander's showing that no matter what, that Porsche will still be fairly competitive on the track.
And what a qualifying session it's been for Simon in that Lamborghini. If they can hold on just a few cars that could realistically upset them, all coming through Sector 3 right now. Jordan Daly in 18th place, looking to improve upon his particular time. And my goodness, what a race we had in the Thursday championship one night ago. He was involved in a three-way fight for an entire hour. All three cars involved for the win in his particular class led at some point, and came down to it. Last or penultimate lap pass. A couple of them in there very late into the race, and absolutely pumped up after that race, and now gets a couple of spots here. 16th in the Just Gamers Mercedes AMG. Final car has crossed the line. Everybody locked into place. Lamborghini on pole, and for what I believe the second or third time this season, we've got an Italian manufacturer lockout, but it's two different Italian manufacturers. Jardier second, Foch third, Facekiss in 4th place, and Alexander in 5th. Rounds out your top 5. And look at that parity in the top 3. The top 3 spots, both or all, I should say, taking one of the fastest sectors in of the traps. That is incredible stuff. Should be a good race, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely, because also Valentin Barrier has shown that during the race he can definitely push forward. So him starting in 6th, going to make it difficult for those guys in front. But also you have to think that Savalainen is going to improve from that 10th position. That's definitely not where you'd think he'd end up. But yeah, anything could happen in these races, just like we saw last week with the carnage that happened.
Couldn't agree more. It's going to be a tale of, well, how far you can come up through the field. This is a track, after all, where you can do such a thing. Talked about last week. We talked about the championship being wide open. Let's show you what we're talking about by reviewing the championship points up to this point. Do bear in mind, this does factor in every driver's drop round. Every driver gets one drop round per season. The lowest ranking race that they were in, how many points they got, is disallowed. Create some fantastic racing. And thus far, Valentin Berrier, after a fantastic performance in several rounds, got the championship points lead, 133 points. Jardier, who we expect to miss a couple of more races this year, but it does not matter right now, sitting in second place, 127 points. Juna Savalainen avoided disaster last week, but finds themselves in third, 120 points. Samir Foch lurking in fourth place, 106. Soldatov rounds out your top five, 102. Very tight at the top indeed. Outside the top five, Thomas Ehrentrout with 81 points. Hugo Merrill's on 71. Work Gozman, 65. Harley Chamberlain, 61 points. And Barnabas Facekiss rounds out your top 10 on 59.
And here are how things are looking just behind. Darzak in 11th has 58 points. Giorgio Migazi and Zygar are tied for 12th currently with 48 points. Horchi in 14th place has 47 points. Kopsov just behind 5 points back in 15th place. Christian Bock and Lele tied for 16th on 41 points, and just behind them is Kodeman with 40 points there in 18th. Pavel Pushkarov has 37 points. They're in 19th place, and just 1 point behind them, Igor Orts, and they're rounding out to the top 20.
Very tight up and down this field. 21 plus cars on the grid today. Christoph Simon, your pole sitter, tied for 21st here with Barnett at the moment, but by virtue of getting pole position, he has sole custody of that position right now. You got Michael Herman with 31 points, tied with Jan Klimes for 23rd place. Scarmato on 30 points. Dixon Chin on 25. Justice on 22 points, tied with a Razor for 27th place. Timo Friev on 21, tied with Daniel Durrett.
Ties still in that midfield area there that will be decided in today's race. Michael Raters in 31st place has 21 points. Jordan Daly is in 32nd with 12 points. Martin Lindrup is in 33rd place with 8 points. Everyone else below, Alan Alexander and Stephen Van Kampen, they are on 0 points, but they are still in the championship. Everyone with a hyphen instead of a little number there is been signed out of this season. So, Jesse, I was going to mention as we were reading out the standings there is that the Lamborghini that we have on pole today, Alexander, currently midfield currently in the midfield in the standings, really finds himself down in 21st. It's not Alexander, sorry, it's Simon. I've got my drivers mixed up there, but Simon currently down in 21st place in Lamborghini, started on pole today. That is going to be a good haul of points, and it should see them gain quite a lot of positions in the standings if they can keep the podium or even just like up into the top 5.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me is where did that come from, right? Absolutely midfield all season. I don't think anyone would argue they didn't. Their points haul is 15, 19, and 0 leading into last week at Hungary. But where did this come from? Out of nowhere, pole position, didn't even look really threatened today. They could jump way up into the standings here with a good race today and maybe turn their season entirely around, Kevin, because all it takes is one.
It does only take one, especially if you've got the stronger drivers like Savalainen currently in P10. This could bring him anywhere. Looking at how he's done now compared to what he did before, it could be just that the combination of him, the Lamborghini, and Paul Ricard, it all just clicks together, and this might be his strongest track. On the other hand, yeah, this could be a springboard to get up to the higher ends of the championship and then continue his climb from there.
I love reading our chat. We are reading chat as always here on RCI TV, and a lot of the drivers coming in to chime in on how they think they're going to do this evening. The GTR up inside the top 15 deserves a good finish, if we're completely honest. Has had a horrible season thus far, but we know the driver behind that car has way more in them than their finishes have said. But what will we see out of Christoph Simon today with pole position in an unfamiliar territory? I think that is the unanswered question. And the other thing, Tim, too, we saw times get disallowed due to track cutting or running a bit wide rather in the qualifying session. Now that we're in the race session, though, they count for real. How many drive-throughs are we going to see? Everyone pushing as hard as they possibly can.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that these drivers have to be aware of. With an hour-long race, very easy to pick up those 4 offences that will grant you with a drive-through penalty. But I don't know, Jesse. I think if you're one of those drivers that's just had quite a rough qualifying because you've invalidated a lot of your laps, I'd expect to see some of them go a little bit easier in the race, especially if they can break themselves into a bit of a gap in position. Maybe they've got 2 seconds ahead, 2 seconds behind. They can just focus on keeping themselves on track. But actually, another point on that is we do have to remember a lot of cars also invalidated their lap times in qualifying. So whilst that may not have definitely changed the result of qualifying, that as well could have handed to why we've seen such a mix-up through the field of where these drivers are, because you've got Simon on pole, which is partially surprising, but at the same time, like we said, could be their track and the Lambo might perform quite well around here. But you've got Valentin Barrier, the championship leader, they're currently down in 6th. Junior Salvalainen, one of their closest rivals, down in 10th too. So all of these things are going to change as the race progresses, simply because they just might not have got the quality they wanted. Maybe they invalidated their best laps. So I agree with Kevin and what they were saying earlier, that a lot could change in the race. And I expect to see a lot of drivers fighting to climb through the field very, very early on.
Well, that wasn't the answer I was looking for. You say they may sort of take it easy and all that. What I want is 5 wide into turn 1. Kevin, can you grant that wish, do you think? Do you think it's going to be a chaotic race, or do you think they're going to mind themselves today?
I think it might be a little bit of a mix of both. There might be some driver that'll try and get a bit further forward. I think Savalainen might be one of those drivers that try and push a bit more than others. Him being in 10th, behind Barrier, behind all his other championship leads, championship contenders, he needs to get up forwards quick. On the other hand, Barrier is not too far behind the rest, so he might take it a little bit easier, a little bit more safe, just to make sure he doesn't get those penalties or incidents early on. But that's why I think it will be a bit of a 50-50 in the mentality of the drivers.
Felt like I got told no by mom, and I went to ask dad the same question in hopes that he would have said yes, and I didn't get told yes by either one of them. Now I'm going to go to my room and we've got a great race coming up. 1 hour mandatory pit stop for everybody, of course. 7:08 p.m. racing into the sunset on one half of the racing circuit, especially here, the third and first sectors. It might become an issue a little bit later on with visibility. For now, though, high enough in the sky not to be a major problem. All the drivers 21 plus coming down the front straight here at Paul Ricard, ready to start round 4. The halfway mark in the season waits at the checkered flag today. Who will take control of this championship? We've had absolutely melee the entire time. We're just about ready to go green, and we have racing here at Paul Ricard. Everybody jockeying for position. It's a clean getaway from Simon. Look at the Ferrari trying to wiggle their way through up to second place as they go into the S's for the first time. 2 by 2, Noah's Ark style behind them.
Yeah, I mean, Simon just had a dream start there. Both the Ferraris sort of disappeared back into the pack, which is exactly what Simon needs to get himself ahead. You can see further down the field, though, a couple of people still going too wide as we continue to navigate through that first sector. Although, hopefully, by the time, Jesse, we get into that long straight, most of this rubble will have sorted itself out. You can see a couple of cars are actually having a bit of contact, some going wide, and one's cut the entire inside of that set of corners. I imagine trying to get out of the way of someone, but midfield, Jesse, just trying to sort themselves at the moment, whereas Simon up at the front, I mean, that's the dream start.
Really was just about a perfect start there. I've never seen a car cut that far to the inside of that specific corner. Most likely, they saw something they didn't like, and they hit the old eject button there. A lot of drafting down the straight here, the Mistral straight, but absolutely no passing done. And I'm almost certain that this is the first race I've ever called, ever seen here at RCI anyway, that we did not have a local yellow in one of the first couple of corners here. Very much well done. Looked like a good job they did there, Kevin.
Yeah, and we could also see that Chartier on the Mistral straight was able to go past Simon. So he's already gotten that first hurdle done. And yeah, he can only, looking at that straight line speed of the Ferrari, he can only go on from there. For Simon, his only thing he can do is try and stick to that rear of the Ferrari, try and get the draft, and maybe take him in one of the tighter corners.
Well, it shows how much I was paying attention. I didn't even see that, but an absolutely brilliantly done. Oh, we're going to think about going 3 wide, 4 wide, maybe here as we thunder back down the front straight. This is not what you want to see. Several of the cars in the middle will be slowed down, an advantage gained by those in the back. A couple went off to maybe advanced position right there. Scary stuff. 3 wide into the S curve here, and they've just about got it done 2 by 2. Oh my goodness, that was very close stuff. Very professionally done.
Yeah, that made me very, very tense that moment. Whenever there's cars 2 or 3 wide go through a corner, you do get a little bit worried. But to have 4 cars alongside each other at one point in time, and also quite a tight area as well, you do get really nervous about how it's going to turn out. But look, they're barely broken up now. I mean, there's a huge train forming here, Jesse. And actually a bit of contact there. Looks like John Racer has made contact with somebody. I believe someone went into the rear of another car, maybe misjudging a braking point there, Jesse. But yeah, I mean, when you see a train like that forming, you just know there's going to be some good racing throughout the entire race.
Well, there's been a move for the lead. Jardier in the lead of the race. Christoph Simon now trying to play catch up. A good slipstream there as one of the cones gets kicked for a field goal. It's good. Put the points on the board, ref. But for right now, still in line. The top 3 car breakaway. It is a all Italian breakaway here in France for the time being. Can Alexander or any of the rest of the drivers catch up to the lead group? It's going to be hard if they continue to sort of work together and pull away. And, well, you will see several of them thinking about making a turn in the Bousset corner, but none of them actually making the move work as the GTR continues to try and make a little bit of headway. I believe that's the Timo Friev, in fact, who was right behind them trying to make that work, and they just got passed by the car, in fact. Well, Kevin, it was an exciting couple of first laps there, a couple of small touches. I just believe I saw Christian Bach go into the pit lane to serve their pit stop incredibly early. The pit windows open. The fastest car on the racetrack is Savalainen, and you said that they could possibly be a car that came through this field. Certainly looking like it here.
Yeah, it's looking like Savalainen. He's like, you can see he's already up to 6th. Barrier's dropped a little bit, so maybe, as I said, he had to be a bit careful. Maybe he was a bit too careful. Also, like Alexander in the Porsche is still very close to that top lead, top 3 group. That's going to be very interesting to look at, especially going through up to the Mistral straight and then into the twisty sector 3. See what he can do there. Maybe even pounds on the start-finish straight and might be able to get maybe a position and maybe able to break away. We'll see.
Certainly we'll see. Jardier out in front, trying to win another one for himself. Could he possibly pull that off today and make it a double? Now, again, he's expected, a little bit of close racing there as Simon goes a little bit wide. Samir Foch, the ultimate opportunist, tries to go around the inside, can't quite do it, and finds himself on the outside. That has brought Alexander back into the fight. Samir Foch's rear wing, looking back at the number 1 Porsche of Alexander, nearly went around the outside, nearly thought about going onto the curb down to the inside to take 3rd away, had to back out of it, thought better of it for the time being, as the top 4 are in a little breakaway, but don't count out Facekiss and Savalainen, who are coming. And keep in mind, Savo started just inside the top 10, already up to 6, and he's gaining time on the leaders by benefit of being the Speed Juice fastest car on the racetrack right now, Tim. Oh, contact here, though.
Oh,
John Racer has made contact. Was that with...
Who is that?
Was that with Frey? That was Frey's Porsche that got spun around there in the final turn.
There seems to have been a slight incident there. Looks like the car behind there, Jesse, went for the inside of the corner, maybe just trying to get out of the way. Maybe they knew they'd misjudged their braking point there and were just trying to sort of avoid the car, but still contact was made there, which is why you saw the car get spun around, because they hooked the right inside, which is why the car spun the way it did. But yeah, I was going to say, Savalainen starting 10th up to 6th. They've overtaken Valentin Barrier as well, which means in terms of championship points, they're going to be earning more too. And I mean, so far for Savalainen, this is a great start to the race. And also for Simon, they did start on pole and they have been overtaken by Jardier. But it's still a second place, and a second place finish for a Lamborghini that's used to finishing in the midfield. I'm taking that any day of the week.
Well, reading chat, as always, Rico says that the Nissan before the pit stop looked like it's a handful to drive. There are certain ways you can set that car up that makes it look a bit sketchy. Normally, I will say, the former Nissan driver myself, it's actually a lot more planted most of the time, but certain ways to make it quick, to extract the extra little bit of speed out of that car, you sort of set it up on an edge. But then again, I think you can do that for the majority of cars, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely with the way you have to set the car up, like you don't want to use too much downforce to lose the straight line speed on the big Mistral straight. But also, if you use not enough downforce, you will be struggling through sectors 1 and 3, where you'll be losing copious amounts of time, where someone might just go onto the back of you and might take an opportunistic little dive, like maybe what we saw on the inside on the final turn between John Eraser and Fry.
Jordan Daly here. I thought for a second Eraser and Daly got together earlier. That wasn't the case, but a couple of pinball maneuvers here. This is what started that 4 wide conversation that we were having a few laps ago. I didn't quite see the contact before, but blatantly obvious there. That's what set them 4 wide. That was not natural. And then this, of course, the extra little contact there as well. Cars went flying. The live stewards, who are looking at several incidents from lap 1, though I feel most of them will be somewhat minor. I think the bulk of the work will be done after the first lap ended, if the replays here are any indication of how the race has gone. Certainly a lot of drivers getting after it here in the early stage of the race, make up the most time possible. Harley Chamberlain here might find themselves in a 3 wide. No, they condense it down to 2 wide. They agree to disagree here in Scene Corner.
Yeah, and you do have to work with your opponents slightly as well when you're racing them this close, when you're trying to navigate corners 2 and 3 wide. You do have to sort of work with the driver you're racing, which sounds a little bit weird and almost contradictory of what you'd actually want to be doing. But the thing is, if both of you aren't sort of respecting each other a little bit, making sure there is a slight bit of room left and just making sure you're aware of where each other are at all times, then that's when the accidents do start to arise. So when you do see these big groups piling up together, it is a lot of putting faith in the other drivers around you to do the right thing. But most of the time, Jesse, with drivers that are driving at this high of a level, you do tend to see it work out well. It's only occasionally things start to go wrong. Samir Foch here under a lot of pressure behind from the Honda of Fazekas, and you can just see Fazekas looking for a way through. They were ducking to the right, they're ducking to the left, all the way down the straight, seeing if there was an opportunity about to open itself. But as expected, Samir Foch able to just keep that defending line good and strong.
Well, remember, it was Alexander who was putting pressure on Foch for P3 last we saw, and now it's been all turned upside down. Fazekas got around him and now being turned by Alexander. Fazekas is going to lose a spot, and that was Savalainen who was in the proper position there. Absolute ultimate opportunist. He's already into the top 5, Kevin.
Yeah, and now just capitalizing on the mistake of others. Like, he already had the pace at the start of the race. Now he sees those little mistakes from others, just nudging each other off, taking full advantage of others' mistakes. And yeah, he is really ramping forward.
A little bit of close racing here down the Mistral straight. That was a sketchy moment. It's going to lead to more contact there between those 2 drivers. Those 2 cars absolutely taking it to each other now. And I don't know if either one of them appreciate it. They probably both think they were in the right. I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you both, gents. I think you're both in the wrong there. You got to have a little bit of give and take, and there's absolutely none here, as now you see one of our championship contenders trying to get involved and trying to gain a couple of spots, and in fact has now, benefiting on others' misery. But we talked about being one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. Jardier, out in that clean air, has now taken the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race award for the time being. But Savalainen will not care about that as they're moving up the field. Huge contact there, Tim.
I didn't see exactly what happened here. We're about to get a race replay. And it looks like Saigar just made contact with the rear of the car ahead. But yeah, it looks like misjudging the brake in there again, just going straight into the rear of the car ahead. And I mean, I caught the car spinning out of the corner of my eye. I was like, oh gosh, something bad's gone down there. But looks like just a slight bit of contact. But that's already been quite a scary corner in this race in particular, Jesse. A lot of the incidents that we've seen so far have happened coming out of that final corner onto the start-finish straight. Does that surprise you at all?
No, absolutely not. I've seen way too many actual races here to know that it's a hot corner and it's going to happen. But I just wanted to point out for Jack Alexander, the Visceral Esports Porsche, that number 1 just had a lap to forget. They fell from 3rd all the way outside the top 10, and now they've been given a 5-second penalty from the stewards from a early incident in this race. And yeah, that's exactly what it looks like there. And well, we saw that live, I'm pretty sure, when it happened from Tamir Fosh's car. But just to reiterate, that's what the 5-second penalty is for. Then, of course, got battered by Facekiss and the like of several other cars. And they've decided to run their pit stop. It'll be 5 seconds longer than they would have liked it to have been. Hard to have a lap like that and to rebound from, Kevin. That was just a horrible lap. You gotta find a way to blank that out of your mind and keep going, surely.
Definitely, but that's also one of the hardest things to do. Like, once you make that mistake, like, either you spin or you go off or you hit someone. Sometimes it can take a long while to get yourself out of that frame of mind. And yeah, the only thing you can do is just continue driving and hope that you can get your focus back and you can get going just the way you were before. Better.
I tell you what, though, we've just been corrected here in the booth. That replay was not what the 5 seconds came from. The 5 seconds came from an off-track overtake. Bring you the penalty report in just a moment. Mr. Kevin Boss will have that for you. But yeah, that was not for that contact. So we should expect, I don't see why we wouldn't expect an additional penalty to be coming through at some time, Tim.
Yeah, it's likely to happen. We saw the incident. It is one of those where you're most likely going to get a penalty for it. And I imagine that Alexander actually knows that as well, though it looks like they have retired themselves to the pit lane. I don't believe they have come out of the pit since they went in to serve the 5-second penalty. But actually, what I was going to say before they went in, Jesse, is don't let it knock you down. I mean, we've seen how many incidents we've had at the start of this race already. It's highly likely that a whole bunch of cars here are going to pick up penalties. You can already see a couple appearing up the board as it is. Samir Fosh going around, going down the straight. Got a lot of slipstream there. It's going to help them slingshot themselves around the Lamborghini at the end, although going ever so wide there at the corner.
Wide.
That means they're going to have to duck back in behind the Lambo, and Simon is going to have to hold on. We'll get to hold on to that position a little longer, but looks like Fosh here, eager to get through the Lamborghini ahead. It does sort of look like the Ferraris are just starting to swallow up that 366 car, but Simon still on that podium, still in that second place for now, Jesse, has managed to hold on to a decent result so far and is still looking for their best result of the season.
And of course, this is music to Jardier's ears right now, knowing that he'll have known that Samir Fosh is trying to battle for P2, the gap opening up all the time, but that was excellent car placement by Simon down the Mistral straight that time and into Scene corner and beyond, because he put himself to set himself up 3 corners later to be able to defend that position. But I'm afraid it is in a losing battle here as Samir Fosh has finally made that pass. Now the question does become, is Samir Fosh fast enough? Does he have enough speed in that car to catch the man they call Jardier? Kevin, stewards have been busy. You've been busy. What's going on down there?
Oh, there's been quite some things happening on lap 1. First things first, we have a warning for car 34 for moving under braking, causing avoidable contact with car 114. That was turn 1. In turn 2, we have a racing incident between 3 cars that were 3 wide through turn 2. Causes contact with no significant time loss for any of the cars. That was car 34, 114 and 300. We have another incident in turn 2. It was 5 seconds for car number 1, that was Alexander, which is for an overtake off-track position not returned on number 5. Then we have a turn 11 incident between car 197 and 699. Warning for car 197, squeezing the 699. Then there is another one on was turn 6 incidents, 5 seconds for car 95. 95 caused avoidable contact with the number 10 on turn in. Turn 15 incident involving 3 cars, the 114, the 197, and the 999. 5 seconds for the 999 causing avoidable contact. And we've got 2 incidents from lap 2 come through, both in turn 6, both involving the cars 197, 114, and the 699. The drive-through for the 114, taking out 197, position not returned, and a warning for the 197. Does not hold the brakes while spinning, 5 seconds for second warning. We've just got an extra one come through, a drive-through for car 181, taking out the 888, position not returned, lap 3, turn 12.
Take a break, Kevin. That was a mouthful. That was a lot to get through. Very well done. And, well, as it turns out, Tim, as always, we're very much wrong. There was a lot of things going on in those opening couple of laps. Here's the 699. We saw the tag, and that's exactly what happened there to John Razor. That's why the one got the penalty earlier on. And, well, it's been like that. We've seen that in the subsequent laps here. A lot of tagging cars, and geez Louise, was that a little bit of retaliation there as well, I wonder?
I don't think it was intentional, the retaliation. It's just one of those things that's likely to happen. Like you said, that final corner on this track here, it's very easy to accidentally tag the inside of someone, especially if you're trying to go for a move down the inside, but also miss your braking marker. If you're just not 100% aware of your car at the time, like, it's very easy to make a slight bit of contact there, and then the car does just lose itself as it turns through the corner. So maybe retaliation, probably not in this case. I think it's most likely that just an accident that's happened twice and with the same cars involved. But yeah, it's one of those things that this track, we've mentioned, it's very easy to pick up penalties as a whole. You, of course, get the drive-throughs by going too wide and at the corners here. You can pick up all sorts of penalties, 5 seconds, 10 seconds for contact errors too. It's one of those ones where I think a lot of drivers coming into this race, Jesse, were probably expecting penalties to appear at some point and play a huge part in what happens in the overall standings.
Yeah, and do bear in mind as well, I think we'd be fools here in the booth to not expect drive-throughs for track limits to crop up at some point, probably in the very late stages of the race. I can't imagine that not happening. Can't ever recall there being a race here where that hasn't happened. You have to tell yourself other people are going to get penalties as well, and we're going to claw back some of the damage done. But what an incredible couple laps. We were talking about it under the formation lap, weren't we? What they were going to do. Were they going to be relaxed, or were they going to go for it? Emphatic answer here, Kevin, is everybody absolutely going for it.
I mean, it does seem that way.
Sorry,
Tim.
No, you going, Kevin?
Yeah, it does seem that way. Definitely at the front with the likes of Sutherland, Jardier and Foch finally both finding their way through the Lamborghini. Held up valiantly. But yeah, with still a lot of stuff happening at the back, they're all fighting each other. A lot is happening. This is going to be an exciting race.
I do apologize. I interrupted Kevin Boss on his well-deserved break after reading off what appeared to be a Stephen King novel of penalties earlier on. I do apologize for that, Kevin. Tim, it's like Kevin says, everybody is trying to get everything that they possibly can, and some of them, almost none of it, I would argue, was intentional. It's just mistakes happen. And here, with the closing rate of some of these corners, the speed difference of some of these cars as well, and the tightness of some of these corners, it sets you up for failure some of the time, especially off of faster corners. And what we just saw there was one of the Porsches who just barely got back onto the racing surface. And it's so easy to invalidate your lap, and the tolerances for that are low. There's a lot of things working against you is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks, like you just said, Jesse, where a lot of things are working against you. But I think another thing as well is, obviously, if you look at the order of the cars now compared to the starting order that we had after qualifying, a lot has changed there. And I think that's probably put a bit more oomph into some of these drivers, maybe made them a little bit more reckless as well. You've got to remember, Salverlinen started down in 10th. They're all the way up into 4th. For them, that is great news. And they're probably now thinking, okay, I can take it a bit easy, have a couple of laps, just put out some decent pace and relax. Valentin Barrier, on the other hand, is thinking, oh God, I've just lost a bunch of places to Salverlinen here. My championship rival is now ahead of me, and I've not even improved from where I started in quali. So they're probably going to be driving that little bit more on the edge to try and make something happen here. Harley Chamberlain fighting off Climbs. Is that Climbs that just overtaken Climbs, or is that I've got a whole mix up of what's happening on the screen. I do apologise, but Harley Chamberlain and Climbs battling it out, it seems, for that 9th place position. Yeah, go back to what I was saying, Jesse. A lot has changed for a lot of these cars out there. Drivers that maybe thought they were going to be having a slightly easy race, that's all been switched up after the incidents that happened in the first couple of laps, and that just, for me, that says now a lot of them are going to be pushing it to the limit to try and make something happen. Here is Harley Chamberlain on the Climbs ahead. They're using the slipstream from the straight to try and get that move done this time around. You can see just the 329 really struggling to just stay ahead here, although the Porsche holding out. For a Porsche, Jesse, I did not expect it there to be able to hold off the Honda in the straight, especially slipstream.
I'm telling you, if the Mistral Straight was only about a couple of meters longer, it would have been a very different story. But you got to know, when you're in a car that lacks straight line speed, you got to know where to put your car to defend. We saw that earlier with Simon in the Lamborghini, knowing to put themselves on the inside of Steen Corner and know that in 3 corners time, they're going to have the advantage as long as they can hold out. Saw the same thing happen right there with Climbs. Yan knew exactly where to put his Porsche to keep Chamberlain behind. Of course, Chamberlain finally won that fight with Magazi. Magazi falling off the back outside the top 10 only just. Chamberlain's looking forward and has to get by Climbs, but further frustrated by that particular move. Had the speed, just didn't have the proper side of the racetrack he needed to make that spot. Speaking of Magazi, they have pitted from the 11th place position for their mandatory stop of the day. Quite curious how the early pit stop's going to work for them, Kevin.
They will have a bit of open track in front of them now, compared to some of the fighting that a lot of the other guys have to do. Maybe having that clear piece of track might help them further on in the race. So I think, especially now that we know where Migazzi has gone into the pits from 11th, it's going to be interesting to see where he comes out.
He will be, and folks, play along at home with us. Where do you think he's going to come out? Keep in mind, he entered in 11th. I'm going to give him a top 10. I'm going to say he's just inside the top 10 when all the pit cycles come through. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to tell at this point in time, but I do think that probably at least one car will have been jumped there by Magazi. Harley Chamberlain having yet another go at Climbs again, though, on the outside, just not able to really be in front by the time they get to that corner. That means that, again, they're going to have to duck back behind going into that 3rd sector there. But, yeah, going back to what you're saying about the pit stop from Magazi there, I think, yeah, it's one of those things you don't know until the time. I would expect them to jump at least one car. However, you never know. It can all come down to a lot of things. I'm going to give them, though, a safe 9th place here, Jesse. Maybe even 8th, seeing as 2 of the cars that were above them do have penalties that they'll have to serve that will most likely push them behind Magazi by the time all the pit stops are done.
One thing that I've seen consistently with the Porsches in this race is they are having to yank that car back on the racing circuit after the Steen Corner. That's the right-hander at the top of the Mistral Straight. And you may have noticed there's a couple of little markers out there, and for those that maybe don't watch real motorsport or are unaware of what's going on there, that's there in real life. That's there on purpose. Whenever the SRO series started coming here, people were so blatantly just going wide and Steen Corner that they put out those little markers there to let the drivers know when they had to be back on the track. You can cut as far off in that corner as you like, as long as you are inside those markers on corner exit. That's why you see so many cars here jerking the car back on track, because it's what they have to do in real life as well. Kevin Boss, though, he's got a couple of penalties for people not inside the lines thus far.
Definitely. We've had a drive-through, as we can see on the timing sheet. Oh, he's already done it. For car 699 for taking out the 181 position not returned. Though there is also a warning for the 181 for not holding his brakes. That was on lap 3, turn 15, then on lap 6, so we skipped a couple laps. Onto turn 6 involving car 1 and 95. 15 seconds for car number 1. Take out 95 position returned. Though, as we know, Alexander has pulled out of the race. Then lap 6, turn 11 involving car 1 and number 5. Warning for car number 5 causing a collision. Turn 13 between car 10 and 1, racing into the minor contact. And then turn 15, once again, car number 1 and number 5. Drive through for car number 5 for taking out number 1, position not returned. And might sound like a broken record here. Lap 6, turn 15, 67 and car number 1, racing into the unavoidable contact with spinning car. And the last incident that we have here is a lap 7, turn 5, involving cars 300 and 256. No further action, minor contact.
Well, I think it's time for Kevin to have another little break after that. That was a ridiculous line of incidents that the stewards had to get through. Not ridiculous incidents. I'm just saying that that was quite high volume for the several incidents that we've seen. Of course, the stewards have eyes all over the place, don't they? They see every little thing. Hopefully the race calms down at this point as we near the halfway point. Impact question for you. Are you surprised that there's more than 15 cars, actually just 15 cars now I've just seen, that haven't made their pit stop to this point? And also follow up, will anybody go as long as they did last week?
I don't think anyone will go as long as they did last week. Of course, that was very influenced by the rain as well, the decision on when to pit last week. But I don't think anyone will go as long as they did last week. I'm not too surprised there was 15 cars left to pit. I think now is when we'll see most drivers come into the pits. Actually, I'm surprised on the flip side that quite a lot of drivers had pitted already. I know some of them had penalties they had served, some of them had damage they wanted to fix as well, but you did see others like Migazzi. They came into the pits really, really early for what I'd consider to be a normal pit window time, because even now, like, I'd still consider this to be quite early, Jesse. Usually it's almost on the dot for 30 minutes. You see everyone pull into the pits, and then they've got the tyres that just very balanced. Of course, one tyre does 50% of the race, the other tyre does the other 50% of the race. But yeah, I think it's quite surprising to see so many cars pit early in this case, and I'm interested to see if the undercut's going to work for any of them. Maybe one of them will be able to push through. I'm still interested to see, will Migazzi be able to climb those places? I know Ricard and Wasbeer in the chat was saying as well, they were agreeing with me that 8th place most likely where they're going to come out, and I've got to admit, I think that could have been a huge opportunity for Migazzi there pitting as early as they did.
People hoping to do the undercut here. Simon hoping to hang on to what is third place. Your pole sitter now falling back through the field. Savalainen doing the opposite. Started just inside the top 10, has found their way into 4th place and might be able to claw their way back on a podium. They clawed their way inside the top 5 a week ago, and that has preserved their championship fight. Another position here would further add to that. Jardier, who, if things held right now, Jardier would be your championship leader at the halfway point in the season. Of course, though, we expect him to miss additional races that won't count as drop rounds, and that makes us focus on the battle between Savalainen and Valentin Berrier, those two going head-to-head, and it would be very, very close. Of course, Berrier has already completed their pit stop, but before that, they were both running inside the top 10. Savalainen was a few positions ahead, which would mean he would get a few more points. It'd be almost a dead tie if that were the case. But in reality, Jardier has only missed the one race. That means that he would have a decent championship lead if this result holds. A long way to the checkered flag tonight, though, Kevin.
Yeah, we still got just about half the race to go, especially with the extra time we'll need for the extra lap after the time has gone out. Still with the entire top 8 still needing to do their pits, a lot can happen. And yeah, I'm also definitely looking forward to see where the likes of Migazzi will be able to come out after everyone's gone through their pits, as we see Simon going into the pits from P3 and Jardier and Force. So the entire top 3 has gone in. So let's see how this plays out.
Well, interesting to see the front runners come in. Is that a case of monkey see, monkey do, or maybe was that the strategy all along, do you think, Tim?
I mean, it's one of those fairly common strategies in motorsport, isn't it? The person that you're fighting goes into the pits, just copy them so that you've got the best opportunity of not losing out to an undercut or an overcut there. So I expect that was just a case of Samir Foch watching Jardier and going, okay, they've pitted, I might as well pit now. That way, I'm not losing anything. Okay, they're also not gaining anything, but it's all about which risk you want to take, isn't it? And I think in this case, those top 3 pitting at the same time, probably the best thing to do, because it just keeps them on even grounds and leaves most of the advantages up to driving and the cars themselves. So yeah, I've got to say, I don't think it's too surprising to see them all pit, especially as well because it was exactly in that time frame when you expect most cars to pit. I'm actually a little bit surprised that cars like Salverline and FazeCast and Dixon Chen as well, they're still out on track, but I imagine what Salverline's going for here is a bit of an overcut maybe, just thinking, okay, I've got a bit of clear air now, let's see if I can do some good lap times, and hopefully that'll put them maybe ahead of a driver. If not, they'll have fresher tyres before the end of the race.
Well, Jardier comes out in 6th place, but most importantly, he is the leader of the cars that have pitted. No difference really between him and Foch. The gap the same, maybe a little bit wider than it originally was, but still a decent lap. Savalainen, though, I expected to go a little bit longer as well. They haven't done. Savalainen and FazeCast both in the pit lane. The 95 Honda has that 5-second penalty Kevin was telling you about earlier. It's going to slow them down. That might put them behind the likes of Valentin Berrier and maybe Simon. Something interesting did happen on that exchange. Berrier did get around Christoph Simon, so the number 10 Bentley Rocket Sim Sport car is in front of your pole sitter right now. That's excellent points for the number 10. Koderman has come into the pit lane as well in the 889. That leaves Dixon Chen in the 62 McLaren as one of the only, if not the only car that hasn't pitted. We'll see if Timo Friev comes in the pit lane this time by. Otherwise, it's going to be a lonely McLaren out there in front of the field.
Well, I'm just wondering what's going to happen here, because Valentin Berrier out ahead of Simon. Jonas Salverline was originally ahead of Berrier. Are they going to still be ahead of Berrier when they come to the pits? I don't think they are. I think Berrier is going to be well clear of this. So Valentin Berrier originally was losing out to their championship rival, now is going to be back ahead by the look of things. What's happening on track here, I believe that is Salverline fighting straight out of the pits with somebody there. Almost like being taken straight away, but will manage to hold on to that position. That's Simon that they've just been fighting for there. So Simon almost stuck behind. Sorry, Simon almost overtook Salverline there. Salverline would have been stuck behind, but looks like 2 cars managed to jump Simon in the pit lane. That is going to be good news for Salverline, but at the same time, they're now losing out to Berrier. Got a bit of catching up to do, Jesse.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous pit stop for Valentin Berrier. How on earth did he set the world on fire with that one? And, of course, Simon had a slow stop, and that allowed Savalainen to jump him. That should have been for 3rd place, but it isn't, because Valentin Berrier had a absolutely epic stop, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely. Look, such a quick stop, so good on his outlap then as well, in order to jump Savalainen, who he was behind. So that must have been an excellent in-lap pit stop, outlap. Just an entirely good combination.
Well, it looks a little something like this. You don't need me to tell you this because you can visually see it, but Christoph Simon had a reasonably slow stop, I would say. Savalainen had a slightly better but still slow stop. Berrier absolutely on it and has jumped all of them. What a turn of events here. We talked about Savo this entire time, having a ridiculously good race, getting up, fighting for a podium spot. Berrier, who Tim and I were talking about earlier, had just been ho-hum, had just been an also-ran in this race thus far, just inside the top 10, has now found their way onto what could potentially be a podium position, but I get the feeling they might be fighting Savalainen at some point in this race, Tim.
Oh, absolutely. Savalainen is definitely not going to let this slide, and they know they have the pace here as well, just based on how the start of this race went for them. So I don't expect for a second that Savalainen will hesitate to try and catch up with Berrier there and even try and take the spot. Simon has fallen down a couple of positions. Of course, they started on pole. Currently, as it stands, I believe they'll be in 5th place overall, if my math is correct. But either way, Simon's come home in 5th place, especially when you're one of those midfield cars used to not being there. We've just got a race replay right now. This looks like Climbs against Harley Chamberlain yet again. Chamberlain back behind Climbs here. Is there going to be contact, I wonder? But no, I think the replay is actually not going to catch the particular incident at hand there. But either way, Climbs back ahead of Chamberlain on the track. But yeah, sorry, going back to what I was saying. Simon started on pole, down to 5th. Might think off the off-bat, oh, that's such a shame for them because they were having a good race. However, for Simon, I think that's going to be still a huge win for them. It's going to be a lot of points for their championship. Harley Chamberlain yet again trying to go for this move around the outside of Climbs. We go to the end of the really long straight here, but it looks like Climbs is going to again hold on that position well. Maybe Salvaline here going to, not Salvaline, sorry, Chamberlain going to go for a cutback, but it's just not powerful enough on that corner. You do really have to throw yourself around with maximum speed there in order to overtake. So Chamberlain yet again finds himself trying to overtake Porsche ahead.
Very close quarters racing. Harley Chamberlain might as well be in a Groundhog Day because it's the same thing, just a different part of the race, still trying to get into 9th place. For those of you playing at home where Magazi was going to come out, well, they didn't make or lose anything. They came in 11th. They are still in 11th place. Dixon Shin pitted out of the lead. They're down to 13th place, and Timo Friev has brought their car into pit lane. That concludes the cycle of pit stops in the midpoint of the race. Still surprising nobody attempted the very long overcut. Everyone deciding pitting in the middle was the absolute best answer there, Kevin.
Well, you could already see with Timofeyev near the end there how fast the leaders were catching him. He was losing out a lot of time. Also, like having to let them go because they're on fresh tires. They're going to have more pace. You're going to have to let them go because otherwise you'll destroy your own pace as well, trying to defend against them. Yeah, it's just, in the end, a good choice to go for the middle. As you see Timofeyev just dropping back rapidly after extending for now what was about 38 minutes.
Going to be an interesting finish to the race. We watch Yen Climbs and Harley Chamberlain continue to duke it out for what is effectively 8th place position now. By the way, turns out Magazi, I've forgotten that Timo Friev had to pit, and that does mean Magazi gained a spot, but that could have been due to penalty as well on another car. Talked a little bit about just keeping it clean and how important that might have been. It certainly has been for some of these cars racing inside the top 10 here today. Jardier leads the race and is pulling away 4.3 seconds over Samir Foch. Valentin Berrier all the way up into 3rd, ran the majority of this race in 6th place. Seemed to be stuck in no man's land, did Berrier, but somehow had a fantastic stop. And Savalainen, who did get by Simon, but somehow got jumped by Berrier. Savalainen has to respond and get back up to Valentin to make this a battle. Otherwise, Berrier is just going to extend the championship gap that he has on the number 100 driver. And what a day this has been. Topsy-turvy, a lot of incidents in the middle part of the field. Good racing here on the top 10, though.
Oh, it's been phenomenal so far. And you were mentioning the race between Valentin Berrier and Salvaline. Not a race that has been specifically against each other on the track. We've got a race replay here. This is Daniel Durrett alongside another car. So it looks like a slight bit of contact as they just go through, I believe, sector 1 here. A slight bit of contact between those cars. Luckily, nothing too drastic like we saw earlier on in the race there. But yeah, Jesse, you mentioned Valentin Berrier and Junior Salvaline, their battle. It's not specifically been against each other directly on the track, but it has very much been a case of who can drive that car the fastest and just gain positions based on it slightly away. And now it's worked out with Valentin Berrier ahead, but Junior Salvaline already closing in by a good couple of tenths per lap. Will catch up with Valentin Berrier on this pace before the end of the race. If they do catch up, Kevin, do you think that Salvaline has a potential to overtake here? What's he overtaking like around France?
Well, it all depends on what your car is set up, like what car you're driving. If you've got a more of a low downforce car, your best bet will be to try and stay behind them until you get to the mid-straw straight and then overtake them there using the slipstream. Otherwise, your best bet will be to try and get behind them as close as possible in the tight and twisty sections of sector 1 and 3, and then outbrake him at a slight straight. Especially turn 1 is a good opportunity to do that. Expect corners like that, and then if you're low downforce, the mid-straw straight to be your best bet.
Yeah,
well,
so France is one of those tracks that there is quite a bit of overtaking potential, especially with that long straight like you mentioned, Kevin. If you can get that slipstream right, as we've seen several times earlier, it can be a huge boost your car's speed and does open up a good bit of potential for that final corner, just after the straight, sorry. But yeah, it's one of those tracks, Jesse, we've not used this. We've had a lot of tracks so far this season where actually overtaking's been a little bit more difficult. Is that something's happened here that I've missed on my screen, Jesse?
Harley Chamberlain just about ran over Yan Climbs into turn 1, the S corner, the very A, if you will, and it looked closer on the trackside camera than it did on the splitter camera of Harley Chamberlain, but they've been very close this entire section that they've been racing each other after the pit stops have concluded. I have no idea what exactly happened here on RCI TV, but viewership has exploded. If you are coming over from another stream to cheer on your favorite driver, hello and welcome. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Kevin Boss. Stewie on the cameras. Welcome in, and while you're here, we invite you to like, subscribe, and join us for the races we got coming up. Of course, we have races pretty much almost every day of the week. The Monday Champ starting up this week. The live stream, the Thursday Champ, will be back with you on Friday. And of course, nobody can forget Night Owl. Night Owl being brought to you this Saturday evening. Always a barrel of laughs, Night Owl Championship. But wherever you are, hope you're well. Thanks for joining us in for the final 17 minutes of this race. It has been one for the ages. You know, Kevin, I always say, Jardier, no matter how good he qualifies, he always seems to race better than he qualified. Well, he qualified well today, and he's not done yet. He has taken it to the field here.
Yeah, it was very quick in being able to overtake Simon in the Lamborghini on lap 2, I believe it was. Just got into that slipstream, got the speed, got him before the turn in, and since then he's just been going away from everyone. His pace has been incredible, and yeah, it seems to be a running trend for him.
Really is just absolutely epic. He never falls down through the field. He always goes up. And I should have known. I didn't mention it today. I usually mention on every stream that he always races better than he qualifies. We've seen that throughout the years. Obviously, it's not just ACC. It's anything with him. The man's just talented. But I don't know why I didn't say it today. And the one day I didn't say it, he goes up there and takes the lead. He's looking to win back-to-back races, something no driver has done thus far. 3 different winners, but today he could spoil all that. For a brief moment, for one lap, Samir Foch had the quickest lap of the race, and now Juna Savalainen has retaken that. I would have said that's good news for Samir Foch, who's trying to run down his teammate and fellow Ferrari driver for the win of this race. Now Savalainen has the quickest lap, and their mission is pretty much the same. Try and get that podium spot back. Try and get Barrier. Would have thought he would have been in third by himself. Turns out he's going to earn it here today. Meanwhile, these two, they need to get a room. They have just been racing each other so hard. Chamberlain keeps driving down into every corner, trying to scare Climbs. Tim, Climbs doesn't care.
Climbs really doesn't care. What I want to do after this race, I'm going to go up to Harley Chamberlain. I'm going to give him a sheet of paper and say, draw the back of Climbs' Porsche for me, because I reckon they could do it just from the memory and how long they've been stuck fighting behind this Porsche so far in this race. I mean, the amount of times we have cut to them going down that really long straight. Chamberlain in the slipstream just doesn't have that last bit of oomph to really push them around the outside of the next corner there. It seems like Chamberlain here just doesn't have that extra bit of power in the engine just to get them alongside down the inside, or even just pass completely by the corner here. So Chamberlain got a little bit more to do, but they've done it once. They overtook the Porsche. They got ahead of Climbs. They're up into that 8th place position. They now have to do it again, though. But going back to what you were saying, Jesse, about Jardier, has had an absolutely phenomenal race. Had an absolutely phenomenal race last week. It's a very similar situation. Started in a place close to the front. Did a couple of overtakes at the beginning. They got him up into first place and then just disappeared off into the field. I mean, if you remember, it was up against, I believe it was Valentin Barrier was in pole position for that race, but the second the rain started, Jardier it was like a whole new person just got in the car and decided to drive it. The pace was just outstanding, and again, it's a similar situation his day. Once Jardier gets into the lead, I don't think I've seen anyone able to combat that pace. But one of my favourite memories of Jardier actually on track is when we were at Indianapolis last season, Jesse, and they were racing alongside another driver. And I don't know if you remember, but they were neck and neck for the entire track. And then the final corner, Jardier just dips back slightly, and then shoots right up the inside where there's barely any room. And it was one of the greatest overtakes I've ever seen in motorsport. That's something that's good about all these drivers is the overtakes you see can be absolutely phenomenal, and you do have to hand it to them. When they're racing out on track, whether it's done on pace and they gain position in the pits, or whether the racing is actually neck and neck with each other, always a good show from Top Split here.
Certainly is, and you know, you have big names like you do in this series. Of course, this is the Pro Split. It doesn't get any better than this. These are the drivers that prove themselves every single race they come out, and they love racing each other. And you only get better by that, racing good drivers. And just look at our top 10, and that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. And Savalainen right back in it somehow, some way, at a slow stop, but has found the pace again halfway into the second part of this race and this stint in particular, and has caught Valentin Barrier. Folks, this is important. This may be for the championship lead down the line. It won't be today because that will belong to none other than Jardier. But down the line, if Jardier has to miss races, this could be a big moment in the championship. Whoever wins this fight here, a few points, as we've seen in several cases, can make a huge difference, Kevin.
Yeah, and he's now just getting to the back of Barrier. His Savalainen's pace has been a lot better, as it seems. Though, will he have enough pace to actually get past Barrier? Because when they fought before, it's always been close and not very a tight winner. Though here we see Savalainen try and go around the outside. Seems like Barrier is just about to be able to get it, going into Sector 3. Yeah, this is going to be a battle for the ages, especially seeing how the championship is on the line, possibly.
Yes, it is indeed the case. Of course, we're only halfway into the season. 4 more races. RCI's longest championship here in the Friday GT Sprint Challenge. 8 races. Normally, it's no longer than 6. Sometimes it's even shorter than that. But this is a massive championship and massive implications here. It's been dead tied for the majority of this season. The drop round, the only defining factor. Today, though, as we have gotten about halfway in, that's going to change. It's all going to be about who can have the most amount of impressive finishes. Today, it looks like it's all going the way of the Yazheet Jardier driver out in front. But we'll see if that will continue. Savalainen continuing to stalk Barrier, trying to make that move. Chamberlain trying to do the same thing to climbs for 8th place. Looks like it's very hard at this stage to make a pass. Nobody, despite how close they're getting, Tim, nobody willing to make that ultimate mistake and dive down the inside like we saw early in the race.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. Obviously, the beginning of the race, very, very aggressive. Drivers want to be getting as many positions as possible, but now you get to the point where a lot of the drivers are calming down that little bit more. They're trying to keep the result that they've got. A lot of them will be happy with the result that they've got as well. Of course, there are some drivers still that are about to fight on track. Like you see, this is the rear view from Valentin Barrier. It's Junior Salvolino who's been catching up to them slowly since the pit. Oh, I say slowly, it's actually been quite quickly since they all pitted. And Salvolino now coming up to Valentin Barrier will be looking for that overtake. These two are championship rivals at the moment. Of course, Chartier will be leading this championship if they win this race. I believe they're the other person in the mix for the championship fight at the moment. Valentin Barrier and Junior Salvolino, two drivers that will be very much fighting for the championship title. I was noticing the chat though, Alex Ahmed said that Bentley in the front is just a custom bop, but this is not a custom bop. That is just Valentin Barrier who has taken the Bentley. They've decided they want to make it one of those cars that receives love and can still be good out on the track, and they are proving that Bentley can still be a very powerful contender. They're currently leading the championship here on Fridays. There's 4 more races left to go, but it doesn't look like Barrier is slowing down, does it, Jesse? They've been phenomenal throughout this whole championship.
Yeah, this isn't Barrier. This is all Savalainen right now, absolutely digging off of several of these corners and absolutely getting it, and it's only a matter of time for me. Cue the Jaws music here. I think Savalainen will get this podium spot at long last, but Barrier is going to probably defend like his life depends on it, and it doesn't really. No matter which configuration they finish in, there's only going to be a few points in it for what will effectively be second place in the championship today. But still, it might be incredibly important near the end of the season. And just to finish up the BOP conversation, we do sometimes not in recent memory, run custom BOP, but all the BOP for all of our championships currently are Kuno's BOPs. No custom stuff here. No funny business. It's all straight up on the drivers. And occasionally you will see cars that outperform, or drivers, excuse me, that outperform their cars. Barrier, in my opinion, absolutely doing that today. Those of you that have just joined us, of course, we had the Lamborghini of Simon on pole position today. Cartier took the lead rather early on into the race. Simon has fallen just about to the back of the top 5 in 5th place. Bosch has started at one point to catch. Oh, big moment there from the Bentley, nearly causing contact there with Savalainen. This is the part of the racetrack Savalainen's the best at, Kevin, and he almost got a little bit too much right there. The wiggle from the Bentley almost caused a calamity.
Yeah, a bit too much speed for Savalainen compared to the struggle that Barrier is having there. But yeah, you can see here in this tight and twisted section, too difficult for Savalainen to overtake. So all you can do at the moment is wait for that extra little bit of mistake from Barrier in order to pounce. But yeah, this is looking like an awesome battle.
Going to come down to the wire. 7 minutes left to go, just after 8 p.m. here in sim time at Paul Ricard in France. I know it's not a fan favorite racetrack. Everyone has their own opinion of this particular place. But man, it has always put on a show here at RCI. And here is Christian Bach talking about fan favorites. We got one lead in the race and one at the tail end of the field. The GC Racing Nissan GTR. Christian Bach had that penalty, had issues with other cars as well. They're in 19th place, but they're about to gain another spot. Timo Friev in the 888. Close here into scene. Trying to do the over-under was Christian Bach. Couldn't quite pull it off. And I say it every week now, sound like a broken record. Bach just has not had any luck in this championship. That GTR and Bach both deserve a higher position than this, but trying to get everything they can here in the late going, Tim.
Yeah, Bach has had a bit of an unfortunate race. Started, I believe, 15th place. Was climbing a little bit at the beginning as well. As Junior Savalainen going for a move here on Valentin Barrier. They're going to be just about ahead as they come into the corner, but are on the outside, coming around the edge. Will Valentin Barrier be able to hold on? They're still on the inside here, approaching the next corner. But it looks like Junior Savalainen just had it in them. Get ahead before the double right-hander was over, and Valentin Barrier though striking back already, looking towards the outside of Savalainen here, but just not quite enough to get fully alongside. A bit of a send, trying to get back up the inside there, coming into the left-hander, but again, just not quite enough from Valentin Barrier. A good couple of attempts though to retaliate there on Junior Savalainen, but Savalainen, once it had that position, just had that slight edge that helped them stay ahead of Valentin Barrier now. But Valentin Barrier, they're going to want to try and stay in this battle, because so far Junior Savalainen just has so much speed and has been outpacing Barrier throughout the race so far. But Barrier now, if they want to keep the big gap they have in the championship lead currently, they're going to want to keep this gap close and try and go for an overtake here, going into the final 5 minutes of the race, Jesse.
Well, I didn't even think about this, but you see the Lamborghini looming large in just about 5th place. And if you think about it, with the day that they've had, they're getting pulled right back into this battle because Savalainen's now having to defend against Barrier. Oh, maybe a little too close for comfort right there, as now Savalainen will go slightly wide. That'll be a compromise entry to this right-hander. Will do nothing but help Barrier keep up pace, but don't look in the mirror if you're Valentin Barrier, the 966 Lamborghini. That's your pole sitter, Christophe Simon, in the background, coming back into the picture late. Will we see a pull-up here from the Bentley? It does look like it is, but not nearly enough in time. But going back to that pass and scene corner, Kevin, you saw Savalainen try that a few times, realized where he was quicker, just had too much pace in those double right-handers, able to get ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly, Jesse. You could see what was happening in front of him. He had a couple of laps to measure up, and then was able to take the position after a couple of attempts. But as we still see here, the Bentley is still close behind and now joined by the Lamborghini and Simon. So this is going to be very enticing for the last couple, 2-3 laps maybe.
Indeed. Just want to remind everybody watching now, you don't only have to watch the race, you can get involved. We've got splits for everybody here at RCI. Doesn't matter if you're brand new or if you are a seasoned pro like these fine race car drivers are, doesn't matter if you have a wheel or a gamepad, we have a split for you here at RCI. Any seasons starting up right now, including the Janetta Cup, starting this Monday. Still time to sign up for that. This Sunday, I believe it's Porsche versus Porsche versus Porsche versus Porsche. 4-hour endurance race, 4 different kinds of Porsche on tap for you in that race. You can sign up for that or join any of our championships mid-season as well. All you have to do is do your pre-quali the week of and be in that week's race. It's just that simple. RaceRCI.com, RACE RCI.com. Get involved. We'd love to talk about you just like we're talking about these fine folks on the track you see now. That is a huge penalty that's just come down. Tim, tell us about it.
Valentin Barrier there picking up the drive-through penalty. That would be for track limits. So we were mentioning how that would play a big part in this race as it came later on, and Valentin Barrier going to be the first driver to succumb to that. That's just a huge loss there for Barrier, because that's going to give the position to Simon. It's going to send them much further down the field as well, which will give Salvaline a whole lot of points for the championship fight too. So Valentin Barrier there, after being overtaken by Salvaline, maybe pushed it a little bit too hard in trying to keep up. I mean, that's not what you want to see with 2 minutes left in the race, is it, Kevin?
Definitely not. That's really taking him out of this fight. It depends on what he wants to do and how much time you lose in the doing the drive-through now as we're at the end of the race. Because correct me if I'm wrong, because I think it's 30 seconds or 1 minute 30 are added to your time at the end of the race. So you might want to have a think of just continuing the race. But yeah, this is not where you want to be this late in the race and then getting that drive-through penalty because of track limits.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. By the way, it is 130 seconds added to your time for it. And of course, he could serve it or he could elect not to. He'll just get a big time penalty either way. That is huge championship implications for Valentin Barrier. He is electing to serve it. He's decided that the time spent down pit lane will be less than the time penalty. He's absolutely right, by the way. This is the smart move by Barrier, limiting the damage, but it's already done. The drive-through will drop him into what I suspect to be third place in this championship. Jardier will be in first, Savalainen second, and Barrier third at the halfway point in the season. Crazy stuff as Christian Bach, the GC racing car, continuing to try and get by. What on earth has happened here? Timo Friev has crashed on the straight here. He has crashed on the Mistral straight. Was there contact? No, just a big bump right about there where the F1 chicanes are. A huge single car crash on the back straight. Have you ever seen it?
Oh, I was not expecting that to happen down the straight. I mean, Bok and Timo Friev, they've been fighting now for, I'd say, a good 10 minutes there with Bok trying to find a way through. And you can see the Ferrari was weaving a lot down the straight, trying to hold off that position, but just being a little too close to the curb there, they hit that bump, and you saw instantly, threw the car completely into the wall. Luckily, it threw them right towards the wall and not left into Bok, because Bok there was alongside them at that point. I think had the car steered left there, would have just completely wiped out both the Ferrari and the GTR. So that's a nice place for Bok. That's going to allow them a bit of open air now in the field. Unfortunately, it's too late for them to really capitalise off that, but Bok there will find themselves up into 18th place. They will not be at the back of the field for this race, which a lot of fans in the chat will be happy to see the GTR up at least one position there.
I love our chat right now. You can tell the Ferrari drivers, the people that main the Ferrari, because they all chimed in with the same thing. Yeah, that's a Ferrari thing. I don't know if that's the best advertisement for that particular car, but I do love the commiserations. Man, absolutely no commiserations for Jaroslav Hanzik, the man they call Jardier. He's twice as nice. He's doubled up and won it again. 2 wins on the season in 4 races. He's only been here for 3 of them, mind you. And what a race it was. Had work to do on the start, but he got it done. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner from round 4, Jardier. Celebrations from the box, apparently. We'll take it. Samir Foch put up a heck of a fight today, it has to be said. Had to battle from 3rd place, had to make some passes, had a nice pit stop as well. Actually was quicker than Jardier after the pit stop for a little while, but will settle for 2nd. It's a double podium for this team. It's a double podium for Ferrari, and why not celebrate it? Savalainen does come home in 3rd. He fought the entire race from 10th place to get that spot, and he is rewarded for his patience and his skill. Fastest lap of the race and the final podium spot. Christoph Simon, what can you say? Was on pole, fell back through the field, but got one of those spots back. Fourth place for him. Faiskus in the 95 Honda. A little bit of an adventure, admittedly, for Faiskus, but does get a top 5. And outside of the top 5, the results on your screen. A couple of Hondas there in the middle together. Chamberlain was able to get around Jan Climbs for 7th place. Climbs in 8th place. What a race we saw. Folks, on your way out, like, subscribe, hit the bell. We got you covered. We'll be back tomorrow night for more GT racing action. And if you've never seen a night owl race, let me tell you something, you're going to want to see it. It's night owl gets a little crazy sometimes. Don't forget to visit the website, racerci.com, sign up, and get involved in sim racing. And also a big thanks to our partners that make this race and every race possible, AK Informatica, for providing our server solutions, Driver61 and Driver61.com. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to Driver61. Driver coaching can and will make you a better sim racing driver. It's worked for several of our admins here. They have the trophies to prove that. And of course, Fanatec. Please use our affiliate link wherever you live to make purchases of quality sim racing hardware from Fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a single penny, and it tells them that we sent you. It helps us with things like server costs. Please and thank you. Thank you to those, of course, that have used it in the past. Thank you for all your likes, your participation. Chat, you were awesome today. Tim Peck, thoughts on the day?
I mean, that's been an absolutely phenomenal race for Jardier, and that's going to help them out so much in the championship. I will admit, Jesse, I've done a bit of a U here, and I've done the math to work out just where they're going to be in the championship. Well, they're going to have 196 points. They're going to be in that first place in the standings as well, and they're going to be about 20 points clear of both Junior Salvalainen and Valentin Barrier, their closest rivals as well. So that is going to be a huge win for Jardier today. And I mean, that's just going to help them so much in the championship, especially if they do have to miss another race or if they have to use another drop round, because of course Jardier is one of those drivers that has already used their drop round of a sign out. So that just helps to extend their point lead that little bit more. And hopefully if they do miss another race or they do have another bad one, that'll just help them to stay in the lead as well. But an absolutely phenomenal race for Jardier's day, and a phenomenal race all around. I mean, we've seen some great overtakes happen on track. Of course, there was a lot of chaos at the beginning, but that did seem to calm down over the race. And I have to agree with Jesse. I'm not the biggest fan of France. Like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of people are. I'm not the biggest fan of France, the track. But I will admit, today's race, very, very exciting in my opinion.
Well, Tim Peck, not the biggest fan of France. You heard it here first. Kevin Boss, we talked
track,
about it early on. Yeah, that's not what you said. We talked about it early on today about this could have the potential to be a chaotic race or a championship decider. It certainly hasn't done that. It has stirred the pot a little bit. Anything that took you by surprise today? Maybe the physicality in the middle stages.
Well, I think more like the amount of things that happened in the earlier laps did surprise me a bit. And also, it's very well done by Simon to try and hold off these amazingly fast drivers in Jardier, Foch, and Savalainen. And usually being a middle-of-the-pack driver, staying in the fight, and then in the end being able to capitalize on Barrier's drive-through, take home P4, catapulting himself up the standings. Like that for me is the biggest story of this race. Just him getting pole, sticking there, making sure he gets those points, and he's got an excellent platform for himself to go on to keep on pushing for the rest of the championship.
Well, we'll see how all the points fall next week. We'll be live here on RCI TV, as always, live from Zandvoort for round number 5 of the GT Sprint Challenge. Don't forget to set a reminder. We'll be right here with you. As for the races and streams coming up, Night Owl tomorrow night, and the Genetic Cup on Monday, the Thursday Multi-Class Series on Thursday, and of course, we'll be right back with you in 1 week's time. Crazy race, deserving win by Jardier, just a dominant affair by the Ferraris today. What will it mean as we get closer to the conclusion of the series halfway point today? Absolutely action-packed. A big thank you to everybody here on the broadcast team, our admins, and of course, our lovely live stewards who are with us every single week. On On behalf of everybody here, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Kevin Boss and Tim Peck. And until next time, have a good night.